Strange but true stories, tales from the light side, the dark side, and the other side. I'm Steve White. So we've been talking about two pretty fascinating people the past few months, in the man we call the Hunter, and a paranormal investigator named Dakota Franson. We received a story from Dakota a few weeks back and bring that to you today. For a little background on this story, you might want to check out the first story we told about Dakota back in November 2018 that we titled Two True Stories of Something Protecting Us. It's the second story in that video and starts around the 10:30 mark. It's not necessary, but to understand who Olivia is in this story, it would help to listen to that story first. If not, no worries. On with the day story. I have been working on a case for a few months now that might spark some interest, and it might actually play out to be an update to the Olivia paradox, as I've called it in my files. I was working on wrapping up a potential demonic infestation case when I received a call from one of my old mentors from a nearby town who was concerned about his 7-year-old son, who I'll refer to for this story as Chase. Chase was showing signs of psychic ability. Concerned about demons, though, his parents reached out to their local minister, Father Jacob, for advice on how to handle the situation. Father Jacob used to be a teacher at a Catholic preschool I attended who recognized I had abilities of my own at a young age and taught me simple protection methods, so I knew how to take on any malevolent forces I happened to come across. He was one of the first people I reached out to after my encounter with the Archangel, Michael, and my ethereal daughter turned out to be a legitimate contact with celestial forces rather than a hallucination from brain trauma. I'll explain a bit more on that later. Father Jacob apparently had a few copies of my public works to show Chase's family as proof of my validity, which included books, news articles, and clips I had put online from old investigations. This was enough to get them to trust me and set up an appointment so I could meet the child and discuss plans to determine any cause behind the alleged phenomena that surrounded the little boy, as further discussions revealed the parents claimed to hear through an old baby monitor what sounded like voices responding to the young man. Though I would normally be skeptical about these types of claims, knowing a child was involved, it was hard to turn away. And then there was the feeling that something felt different about this case. There was a vibe that indicated to me that this was only part of a much larger puzzle. I knew Father Jacob wouldn't have sent the family in my direction if he didn't believe there was something going on, and if proven legitimate, having someone with experience dealing with his potential abilities could be beneficial to his well-being. A few days later, I met with the boy's parents, Helen and David. They met me at the door and repeatedly thanked me for agreeing to come and started to give me more details about what was going on. They told me that soon after they moved into the house, when Chase was about 3 years old, he would talk about the history of the place like he heard about it from the old owners themselves. He knew about secret hiding places the previous family's kids used to hide old toys. It was interesting, to say the least, as the house was on the market for a couple of years after the previous owners passed away there in their sleep. Helen and David also claimed that they heard footsteps, felt weird temperature changes, and saw occasional shadows out of the corners of their eye, but didn't think much of it until Chase started reacting the way he did. In the days leading up to the initial interview, I conducted a thorough history check on the house. After I interviewed the parents about the house, as well as their own medical histories, like head trauma, drug use, history of mental illness, those kind of things, I inspected the area for environmental factors which have been known to cause unsuspecting people into believing they are experiencing something paranormal, which could include carbon monoxide, mold, faulty wiring, and even geomagnetic waves from the very ground the house stood. Aside from verifying the identity of the previous owners, there was nothing under normal conditions which would cause anyone to experience what was happening in that house, other than maybe mild sleep deprivation. But those measures were simply in place to eliminate what I like to call contaminants and assess potential dangers at the location to both the clients and myself. There was still one thing that needed to be done: testing Chase. I discussed the procedures I had in mind with Helen and David to see Chase's potential firsthand, assuring them nothing harmful would be attempted. He may get a bit of a headache should he strain himself, but that would be the extent of it. They consented, which was useful because I needed their help to conduct a few of them, and we proceeded. To help speed things up, I'll skip over the details behind each test. However, it is worth mentioning that Chase was a bright child who excelled at every test beyond my expectations. He possessed precognition, which is the ability to tell future events, clairvoyance, or the ability to sense information through psychic means, as well as mediumship, some past life regression, and he even had the potential to communicate telepathically. I have had over 200 people, adults and children alike, come to me in regards to testing for psychic potential and mentoring, but young Chase had to be one of the most promising, though after a couple of months of working with the young man, he had a warning for me that would change everything. "Dakota, who is Livia?" he asked me one day. "What was that, buddy?" I asked him. "Olivia. She wanted me to tell you that her mom is going to go to the hospital because of an accident." I honestly wanted to say a few words that shouldn't be said in front of little kids, but if this turned out to be a credible lead, then the one case that has been on my mind for almost 12 years was finally coming to a close. I had used every method I could think of, from scrying, dowsing, channeling, summonings, and even chasing leads to find the guy known as the Hunter to see if anything could give me just a rough timetable so I knew when to be ready. Granted, it is likely nothing, except the day I'm freaking out in a delivery room would provide 100% certainty that Olivia was coming. But a part of me felt like a failure for not trying. It might sound like I was paranoid, but if you stood in my shoes and collected the information I have on this matter, you'd probably be just as scared, if not more. I've always had a habit of dating the damsel in distress type, as those who have followed the stories on this channel about me so far have probably gathered by now. After my grandfather was able to see Olivia during his final moments, it seemed the only people who could meet her are blood family who were on the verge of dying themselves. A possibility has even presented itself in which states Olivia had already died in a previous life and somehow was in the later stages of the reincarnation process, and that someone served as a loophole to allow the Archangel to introduce us. It would only be logical to see that something bad was about to happen, and I dare anyone to contest me on not wanting someone I care about to come to harm. Even I have to admit it sounds crazy, but I gave up on trying to stay sane through everything that happens a long time ago. However, if I had to look at it from a research angle, there is a belief amongst quantum theorists that suggests beings that exist on higher dimensions might have the ability to change their age at will, and many of the people I have known to pass away and later present themselves as spirits were able to do the same. So, just to make sure you're following me here, I don't know the woman who is Olivia's mom yet. That's part of the mystery. But it was clear I was about to be called to action to the one thing I have wanted most in this world. The only problem? I couldn't just barge into the hospital every day inspecting every woman that gets brought in. I needed to wait for a definite sign before I entered, even if it meant praying one of my nurse friends, who was aware of the situation, would work their way around hospital protocols to contact me if anyone they tended to spoke of anything similar. An opening to a possible solution presented itself, though it was an unfortunate circumstance, as a dear friend of mine was admitted into the hospital because the cancer in his system from his time in Special Forces during the Vietnam War and constant smoking finally became too much for him to bear. I was able to visit him and his family in the hospital a day before he was gone to say my goodbyes. As I started to leave the hospital, too emotional to pay attention to where I was going, I found myself on the wrong floor and stopping when I noticed a familiar face I hadn't seen in years asleep in the bed. Her name was Jennifer, and we had gone to high school together long before I switched schools to take on classes to help me with my research. My heart must have pounded loud enough to wake her up, racing even more when she called my name. There were rumors about her having feelings for me back then that I mostly ignored due to personal matters I didn't want to involve anyone else in unless absolutely necessary. "Hey, you. Long time no see," I joked. "Dakota, what are you doing here?" she asked me. "I came by to visit a friend upstairs, and I happened to walk by and see you. What happened, if you don't mind me asking?" "Some guy hit my car. It hurts too much to think about, but I'm glad you're here. I want to ask you something. You're still into that ghost stuff, right?" I came into the room and sat in a chair next to her bed. My heart continued to race as I tried my best not to get excited and freak her out. "Yeah. Did you see something?" I asked her. "I did. Or at least I think I did. I remember seeing this blue light and my grandma holding hands with a little girl. She had blonde hair and blue eyes that reminded me of you." "Did that little girl have a name?" "Yeah. She told me her name was Olivia. Olivia Hope." Well, that's a cliffhanger ending to this story. We hope to hear more from Dakota as he continues to unravel this mystery he's been searching for the answer to in his own life for some time. This has been another strange but true story, submitted to us by the paranormal investigator Dakota Franson. Check out his website at dakotafranson.com. If you have been assisted by Dakota or have had a similar experience with someone else, we would love to hear about it. Send your story to strangebutTrueStories2@gmail.com. Subscribe if you haven't already, and sign up for notifications in the upper right corner. Thanks to those who have. We continue to grow every day, and we are truly grateful. Thanks also for watching this video. I'm Steve White. Until next time.